Morning, my name is Adam St. Paul. I think you guys know me from the radio, but I'm just here asking as a constituent today. I had a question for Senator Greenfield. In the anti-nepotism case, you mentioned when you tabled it that you know Governor Noem, and you know she's a woman of integrity and faith and all these things, and that's fine, and I'm sure you do, but do you not see, and I'm just kind of wondering if you would walk me through it, do you not see the benefit in that for an instance when there's a governor that you don't know, you haven't worked with, and that these are things that a lot of other boards and whatnot have in place already, so there wouldn't be a reason for it in the government? Thanks.
Centerville, well, I don't remember the number right offhand, but it was obviously brought because of current hiring decisions that have been made, and was intended to make a statement. It made a statement very clearly, and in answer to your question, sir, it's a valid concern. It's a good discussion to have. The fact that it was as personal as it was intended to be, I think was reason to give pause and to consider it. And I guess the question that I had posed to me by a number of people is, if you start limiting your availability of options in South Dakota, how many people are you going to have left? It seems as though everybody's related to somebody pretty, closely. I don't know the degrees of separation, but that was a compelling argument. One other thing that I had heard from somebody that I thought was valid is the governor and her daughter have a very strong relationship, and well, that's obvious, but the way that Christie talked about Kennedy and how she kept her grounded on the campaign trail and whatnot, I think really it spoke to me, because I want people to surround themselves with the best possible people and the best possible influences, and the people who are going to help them to maintain their foundation and their balance. And I do think that the people of South Dakota place their trust in the governor, and she's trying to make the best decisions relative to hiring. I think she knew that she was going to come up under scrutiny by hiring her daughter, and she chose to anyway. Her daughter has proven herself to be an asset so far, just in terms of the knowledge that she brings to the table from the conversations that I've had with her. And so I think, especially at this time, given the immediacy of the issue and how raw nerve it strikes, because it's because it does tread too closely, I think I thought it was an ill-timed bill. It wouldn't have affected any hiring decisions that have been made up until now. It would affect those going forward. Excuse me. So, we can always readdress the issue, but again, with respect to the issue this time around, I just felt probably best to lay it aside. We've operated as a state for this long without we've had concerns. I'll be honest. It's a valid concern. I mean, if somebody that I had a little more objectionable, or that I was a little more objectionable toward was the governor, I'd probably already be like not trusting and see decisions being made and think, well, there's another, bad decision. So I get it, but with respect to this hire, I think it was a good one, and I do support the governor's ability to make those decisions. And I also respect the legislature's role in reining things in, and will tell you that we may consider that in the future. but we hadn't, as the senator pointed out, for a number of years. When he came before the committee, he talked about the concerns that he had had for the last few years. At first, he didn't have those concerns, and over time, he started to have concerns, but yet no legislation was brought the last 8 years, 7, 6, 5 years. Waited until a very maybe inopportune moment and then brought the legislation forward. So I will also tell you, under Governor Rounds, there was another bill that went to the heart of hiring decisions that couldn't be made. And there was a particular individual who was a department level secretary, and so cabinet level, and that person had come under fire by some of the veterans groups, and there was legislation drafted to affect that person, or maybe hiring decisions going forward. Well, the legislation was not successful right out of the gate, but over time, after that person had moved on and it wasn't so personal, actually the legislation passed with a pretty strong majority. So, you know, I talk about the immediacy of issues and whatnot, and I think that is something that does have to be considered. Thank you.
Governor Dugard, too, hired his son-in-law as well. So I'm not picking on Noam here. I'm just saying this is something that has come up multiple times, as you said.
And for those who couldn't, I appreciate it. Stay here because it's just going to be 10 seconds. He said that Governor Dugard had hired his son-in-law, and that was actually the point that this gentleman made in his testimony, that at first he thought that was okay, and then over time started to not feel that it was so okay. But as I said, that we didn't see the legislation until this year after, and there would have been plenty of opportunities the last few years to have that discussion.
Adam, thanks for being here today. I always enjoy my visits with you. Good question. I was on that committee, and so with having my computer, I looked up the word nepotism, because nepotism just is a bad thing. We know that. So I looked it up, and it says basically involved when you hire your friends and family. I go, wow. I can't hire my friends, do I hire my enemies? That's not a good idea. My small business, we practice nepotism. I try to hire my friends and family because they're good people. At one time, we had 9 family members working in my small business, and that was nepotism at its finest. People that worked hard and people I could trust. What a deal. But, and I asked the sponsor, I says, are you willing to use the definition of nepotism in the dictionary, which is friends and family? And he said, yeah, I'd like to do that. Are you serious? We can't hire the people we know and trust? So anyway, in this exact case, what they're talking about is the governor's daughter. She makes approximately $40,000. She's a college graduate, and I understand from talking to multiple sources, she is great. She is a future rising star with a lot to add. And the other part of nepotism is you have to overpay them for what they do. And I don't think anybody stepped forward and said that the governor's daughter is overpaid based on her work history and her talents and education. So that's one side of the story. I pushed back pretty hard against the sponsor of the bill. And the reason I did was this particular legislator uses the word culture of corruption on a regular basis. Now, South Dakota. South Dakota's got a culture of corruption. And I asked him, I said, what are you talking about? He says EB-5. Okay, EB-5. I think there's one person convicted of one crime. Maybe you thought more people were guilty of something, but the state's attorney wasn't able to find anything beyond that. The attorney general wasn't. The U.S. attorney wasn't able to. They all tried to, and that's what they got, is one conviction. And he says, well, how about Europe? I said, well, yeah, that's a few people down in Platte, South Dakota that were doing some bad things. But that doesn't make a culture of corruption in Aberdeen. Doesn't make a culture of corruption in South Dakota. Doesn't make a culture of corruption in Pierce, South Dakota. In the state capitol, there's 105 legislators. They are good, ethical people. There are lobbyists in the building. There are state employees in the building. They're good, ethical people. They work hard. As I said in committee yesterday, if someone's breaking a law, prosecute them, report them, hold them accountable. But don't show up and say, this building has a culture of corruption when it's got occupied by good people. And I'll push back all day long on people that attack the integrity of South Dakota and South Dakotans. Thank you.